My daughter told the entire church I worship Satan in our basement. The words came from my neighbor Kaida, standing at my mailbox on a Tuesday morning. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. The sun was bright. The street was quiet. Everything felt normal except for those impossible words hanging between us. "What did you just say?" My voice sounded small. "Everyone's talking about it, Tinana. I thought you should know before Sunday service." Kaida's face was tight with pity. That pity made it real. I walked back inside my house. The kitchen smelled like coffee I'd made an hour ago. I sat at the table and didn't move. My daughter, Emmeline, was 23. She still lived in my home. The basement she'd mentioned was where I kept my winter clothes and old furniture. It was damp and cold and completely ordinary. The phone started ringing around noon. My sister Payleen called first, then my brother Leoar, then people from church whose numbers I barely recognized. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Someone had heard something. They wanted to give me a chance to explain. They were concerned. They were praying for me. The concern was the worst part because it meant they believed it. I found Emmeline in her room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I opened the door, and something in her expression shifted. She knew what I was about to ask. "Did you tell people at church that I worship Satan?" The question felt absurd even as I said it. Emmeline set her phone down slowly. "Not exactly." "Then what exactly did you do?" "I said you have strange practices in the basement. I said you keep candles and symbols down there, and that you don't let me go down there anymore." She met my eyes with a calmness that made my stomach turn. "I didn't say Satan. Other people said that part." I sat on the edge of her bed. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've been impossible to live with," Emmeline said. "You're always criticizing me. Always disappointed. I'm tired of it." The words landed like physical blows. I'd been strict with her, yes. I'd pushed her toward college while she wanted to take time off. I'd expressed concern about her boyfriend Maxer, who seemed to spend money like it grew on trees. But these were normal parental worries. They didn't justify destroying my reputation. "You've lied to an entire community about me," I said quietly. "I told the truth about how you make me feel," Emmeline said. "The rest is just interpretation." I left her room and went downstairs. My hands were cold. I couldn't think clearly. The basement door was in the kitchen, and I opened it for the first time in weeks. The stairs descended into darkness. I flipped the light switch. The basement was exactly as I'd left it. Plastic bins of winter sweaters, an old couch I'd been meaning to donate, a shelf with Christmas decorations, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. There were no candles, no symbols. Nothing but the ordinary detritus of a normal life. I climbed back upstairs and made a decision. I would go to church. I would speak to the pastor. I would explain that my daughter had fabricated a story. I would show them the truth. Surely the truth would matter. But when Sunday came, I discovered that truth was far less powerful than I'd believed. The church parking lot was full when I arrived. People were already inside, and I could hear their voices even before I opened the main doors. The sanctuary was crowded. Nearly every pew was occupied. I'd never seen it so full on a regular Sunday. They were all here because of me, because of what they believed about me. Pastor Timaeus was at the pulpit when I walked in. He saw me immediately. His expression didn't change, but his eyes shifted away. That small movement told me everything. He'd already chosen his position. I made my way to the front pew, and the crowd parted like I was contagious. People I'd known for 15 years suddenly found reasons to look elsewhere. My friend Danilina, who I'd visited in the hospital when her mother died, turned her head as I passed. Danilina, who I'd brought meals to for 6 months, who I'd held while she cried. I sat down and waited for the service to begin. Pastor Tomias cleared his throat and started with a prayer about spiritual discernment. Then he began his sermon about the dangers of hidden darkness. He never mentioned me by name, but he didn't need to. Every reference was pointed directly at me. Every scripture about deception and hidden sin. Every warning about wolves in sheep's clothing. The sermon lasted 45 minutes. It felt like hours. When it ended, people filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact with me. A few approached with false concern, asking if I needed prayer, if I wanted to confess, if I'd consider speaking to a counselor about my spiritual struggles. None of them asked me if the accusations were true. None of them wanted to hear my side. I left before the final hymn ended. Driving home, I realized that Emmeline had weaponized the one thing I couldn't fight directly. A lie told by a family member carried weight that facts couldn't overcome. I could show people the basement. I could prove there were no rituals. I could demonstrate my years of church attendance and volunteer work. But none of that would matter, because the story was already told, and people believed what they wanted to believe. When I got home, I found Emmeline in the kitchen with Maxer. He was making coffee like he lived there, moving through my kitchen with the casual ownership of someone who'd never been told no. Emmeline was smiling, and when she saw me, her smile widened. "How was church?" she asked. "You know how it was," I said. "Everyone there knows what you told them." "Good," Emmeline said. "Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to be judged unfairly. The logic was twisted, but I saw what was happening." This wasn't about my parenting. This wasn't about disappointment or criticism. Emmeline was punishing me for something deeper. She was punishing me for having expectations, for not accepting her choices without question, for being her mother instead of her friend. "Your boyfriend shouldn't be here this early," I said to Emmeline. Maxer set down his coffee mug. "I think I should be able to visit my girlfriend whenever I want." "Not in my house," I said. "Not without permission." "See?" Emmeline said to Maxer. "This is exactly what I mean. She treats me like a child." "You live in my house," I said. "You eat my food. You use my utilities. There are rules." "Then maybe I should move out," Emmeline said. The threat hung in the air. I knew she meant it. I also knew that Maxer had been encouraging her toward independence for months. He'd suggested she get her own place. He'd implied that I was holding her back. He'd slowly positioned himself as the only person who truly understood her. "If you move out, that's your choice," I said. "But I won't be helping you do it." Emmeline's face hardened. "Fine, Maxer will help me." "Of course I will," Maxer said, putting his arm around her. I went upstairs to my bedroom and closed the door. The walls felt like they were closing in. My reputation was destroyed. My daughter was turning against me. My church community had abandoned me, and I was completely powerless to stop any of it. Over the next week, things escalated in ways I couldn't have anticipated. The local newspaper published an article about spiritual safety in the community. It didn't mention me by name, but it referenced concerning practices being reported in local homes and quoted unnamed church leaders expressing worry about occult activity. The article didn't present any evidence. It didn't interview me or ask for my side. It simply reported the accusation as though it were fact. My employer called me into her office on Wednesday. Carrie Ann was the principal of the elementary school where I worked as a counselor. She'd always been supportive of my work. She'd given me excellent evaluations, but now she looked uncomfortable, like I was a problem she needed to solve. "We've received some calls," Karan said carefully. Parents expressing concerns about your fitness to work with children. What kind of concerns? I asked, though I already knew. About your personal beliefs and practices, Karen said. I'm not saying I believe any of it, but we need to take these things seriously. Parents have rights. I haven't done anything wrong, I said. I know, Karen said, but the perception is what matters right now. I think it would be best if you took some time off, paid leave, just until this blows over. This won't blow over, I said. My daughter started this lie, and now it's spreading like wildfire. I understand, Karen said, but my hands are tied. The school board is getting involved. I left her office and went home. By Friday, I'd been formally placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. By the following Monday, I'd been suspended without pay. The investigation would take weeks, they said. During that time, I shouldn't contact any parents or students. I shouldn't come to the school. I shouldn't discuss the case with anyone. I was effectively erased. Emmeline moved out 3 days after my suspension. Maxer helped her pack her belongings into his truck. I watched from the kitchen window as they loaded box after box. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look back. She simply left, taking with her the last thread of normalcy I had. That night, I sat alone in my house and tried to understand how my life had fallen apart so completely in just 2 weeks. The lie had metastasized. It had infected every part of my existence. And the worst part was that I couldn't prove it was a lie. I could only deny it, and denial meant nothing against the power of a story told by family and believed by a community. I called my brother Leor. He answered on the 3rd ring. I need you to tell me the truth, I said. Do you believe what Emmeline said about me? There was a long pause. I don't know what to believe. I'm your sister, I said. You've known me my entire life. I know, Leor said, but Emmeline wouldn't just make something like that up. She absolutely would, I said. She did. I'm telling you, Leor, there's nothing in my basement but old furniture and Christmas decorations. Then why would she say it? Leor asked. Because I told her she couldn't drop out of college, because I didn't approve of Maxer, because I had expectations for her life and she wanted to punish me for that. That's a pretty extreme way to punish someone, Leor said. Yes, I said. It is, which is why you need to believe me. But he didn't. He said he'd think about it, but his tone had already shifted. He was already distancing himself. I could hear it in the way he said goodbye, like he was talking to a stranger. I hung up and didn't call anyone else. The investigation into my conduct took 6 weeks. During that time, I was confined to my house. I couldn't work. I couldn't go to church. I couldn't face the people who'd turned their backs on me. I spent my days reading, cleaning, reorganizing things that didn't need reorganizing. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, trying to find the moment where everything had gone wrong. The school board's final report came on a Friday afternoon. I was cleared of any wrongdoing. The investigation had found no evidence of inappropriate conduct or dangerous practices. The accusations were deemed unsubstantiated. I could return to work immediately. The relief I felt lasted approximately 30 seconds. I returned to the school on Monday morning, and the atmosphere was toxic. Parents had organized a petition asking for my removal, nearly 200 signatures. Teachers who'd been friendly suddenly had reasons to avoid me. Students looked at me with confusion and fear, like I was a stranger wearing a familiar face. Carrie Ann called me into her office again. "We've cleared you," she said. "But I think you should consider whether you really want to come back. The community's concerns won't go away just because the investigation is over." The community's concerns are based on a lie, I said. I know, Corinne said. But perception is still what matters. I think you'd be happier somewhere else. I've worked here for 8 years, I said. I've helped hundreds of students. I know, Corinne said. And you were excellent at your job. But this is bigger than any of us now. I understood what she was really saying. She was telling me that my reputation was too damaged to recover. That the community would never trust me again. That staying would only make things worse. She was offering me a graceful exit, and the message was clear. Take it. I submitted my resignation that afternoon. Losing my job was the final domino. Once I was no longer employed by the school, the story changed. I wasn't a counselor who'd been cleared of false accusations. I was a woman who'd been forced to leave her job because of spiritual concerns. The narrative shifted to fit the lie. Weeks passed, then months. I became isolated in ways I'd never experienced before. My phone stopped ringing. My mailbox filled with bills and advertisements, but nothing personal. I went to the grocery store and saw people I'd known for years, and they suddenly became very interested in their shopping lists. I considered leaving town, starting over somewhere new. But I realized that would confirm the lie. Running away would suggest guilt. So I stayed, and I endured the silent treatment, the whispers, the way people looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. Then, 3 months after Emmeline moved out, I received an unexpected phone call. Mom? It was Emmeline's voice, and she sounded different, scared. Yes? I waited, not knowing what to expect. I need to tell you something, Emmeline said, about what I said at church. My heart started beating faster. Okay. Maxer made me do it, Emmeline said. He said if I didn't create drama with you, you'd never let me move out. He said I needed to make you look bad so that no one would blame you for kicking me out. I couldn't speak. I couldn't process this new information. He's not a good person, Mom, Emmeline continued. I didn't realize it at first, but now I see it. He wanted to isolate me from my family. He wanted to make sure I was completely dependent on him. When I wouldn't do what he wanted, he started being mean to me. He said things that made me feel worthless. Where are you? I asked. I'm at a friend's house, Emmeline said. I left Maxer last week. I've been staying with Lael. But I can't stay here forever, and I don't know what to do. Come home, I said. Come home right now. Emmeline arrived an hour later. She looked thinner than I remembered, and there was a bruise on her arm that she tried to hide. We didn't talk much that first night. She just needed to sit in my house and feel safe. We ordered pizza and watched television without speaking. But the silence was different now. It was the silence of understanding, not judgment. The next morning, Emmeline told me everything. How Maxer had gradually isolated her from her friends. How he'd controlled her money. How he'd made her feel like she was crazy for questioning his behavior. How he'd encouraged her to lie about me as a way to ensure she'd have nowhere else to go. How he'd used the lie as proof that she was unstable and unreliable, which meant no one would believe her if she tried to leave him. It was textbook emotional abuse, and I'd been so caught up in my own pain that I hadn't seen it happening. I'm so sorry, Mom, Emmeline said, and she started crying. I've ruined your life. No, I said. Maxer ruined your life. I was angry with you, but I understand now that you were being manipulated. But everyone at church hates you because of what I said, Emmeline said. Yes, I said. They do, and we need to fix that. The question was how. Emmeline was willing to go public with the truth, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. People don't change their minds easily, especially when a lie has already taken root. The truth, when it finally arrives, often feels like an accusation rather than a correction. People who believed the lie would feel foolish for having believed it. They would resent me for making them feel foolish. But we had to try. Emmeline agreed to speak to Pastor Tomias. I made an appointment for the three of us to meet. When we walked into his office on a Tuesday afternoon, I could see the discomfort on his face. He'd already made his judgment. He'd already chosen his narrative. The truth was going to complicate everything. Emmeline has something she needs to tell you, I said. Emmeline explained everything. She talked about Maxer's manipulation. She talked about how he'd convinced her to lie about me. She talked about how the lie had been designed to isolate her from her family. She cried while she spoke, and I could see her hands shaking as she revealed the truth. Pastor Tomias listened without interrupting. When Emmeline finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "This is a serious accusation to make against someone," he said finally. "It's not an accusation," Emmeline said. "It's the truth. I lied about my mother. I'm sorry." "Why should I believe you now?" Pastor Tomias asked. "You've already proven that you're willing to lie." The question was fair, but it was also devastating. He was right. I'd lost my credibility. The lie had damaged my reputation so thoroughly that the truth couldn't repair it. Even my own confession wouldn't be enough. "Because I'm confessing to the lie," Emmeline said, "if I was still lying, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be with Maxer, letting the lie protect me." Pastor Tomias didn't look convinced, but he said he would consider what we'd told him. He said he would pray about it. He said he would speak to the church leadership, but his tone suggested that he was going through the motions, not that he genuinely believed us. We left his office, and I knew that nothing would change. The truth had arrived too late. The lie had already calcified into accepted reality. Even if Pastor Tomias believed us, the community would resist the correction. They would find reasons to doubt Emmeline's confession. They would suggest that she was recanting under pressure. They would hold on to the original story because it had already become part of their identity. I was right. Pastor Tomias did speak to the church leadership, but instead of announcing that I'd been falsely accused, he gave a vague sermon about the dangers of jumping to conclusions and the importance of forgiveness. He didn't mention the lie. He didn't mention Maxer's manipulation. He simply suggested that everyone had been too quick to judge, and we should all move forward with compassion. It was the worst possible outcome. The implication was that I might be innocent, but the doubt remained. I was rehabilitated just enough to be tolerated, but not enough to be trusted. People started talking to me again, but their conversations were stilted and formal. They were being kind to someone they still believed might be dangerous. I realized that I would never fully recover my reputation in that community. The lie had changed the fundamental way people saw me. Even with the truth revealed, I would always be the woman who'd been accused of worshiping Satan, not the woman who'd been falsely accused. So I made a decision. I found a new job at a different school in a different district. I started attending a different church across town. I slowly rebuilt my life in spaces where my reputation hadn't been poisoned. It took time, but gradually, I began to feel like myself again. Emmeline moved back in with me, and we worked on rebuilding our relationship. It was difficult. There was still anger between us, even though I understood now that she'd been a victim of manipulation. But we went to therapy together, and slowly, we learned how to talk to each other again. She enrolled in college, and this time, she did it on her own terms, not because I'd pushed her. A year after Emmeline's confession, I received a call from my brother Leoar. He wanted to apologize. He said he'd been thinking about everything, and he realized he should have believed me. He said he was sorry for abandoning me when I needed him most. I understand why you didn't believe me, I told him. Emmeline was convincing because she was telling the truth from her perspective. She believed what she was saying about Maxer's influence. That's not an excuse, Leora said. You're my sister. I should have stood by you. You're standing by me now, I said. That's what matters. He asked if we could meet for dinner. I said yes. When we sat down at the restaurant, I could see the weight of guilt on his face. We talked for hours about what had happened, about how easily lies can spread, about how communities can turn on their own members based on unverified accusations. I've been thinking about this a lot, Leora said. About how quickly everyone was willing to believe the worst about you. About how no one asked for evidence. No one gave you the benefit of the doubt. People believe what they're afraid of, I said. Occult practices are frightening. Satan worship is frightening. It was easier to believe the lie than to question it. But you're not frightening, Leora said. You're my sister. You're kind and patient and thoughtful. How could anyone who knows you believe you were capable of something like that? Because people don't really know each other, I said. They know the version of each other they've constructed, and when someone offers a different version, one that's more dramatic or interesting, people are willing to accept it. Leora nodded slowly. I'm sorry, he said again. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. I forgive you, I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness didn't erase what had happened. It didn't restore what I'd lost. My career had been derailed. My reputation in my original community had been permanently damaged. My relationship with my daughter had been fractured in ways that would take years to fully repair. And I'd learned a hard lesson about the power of lies and the fragility of trust. Now, 2 years after Emmeline's initial accusation, I find myself in a different place. I work at a new school where no one knows about the accusation. I attend a new church where people see me for who I am, not for a lie someone told about me. I've built a new life, and it's quieter and simpler than my old one. But it's mine. Emmeline is doing better. She's in her 2nd year of college, studying psychology. She wants to help other people who've been in abusive relationships. She's channeling her experience into something meaningful. We have dinner together every Sunday, and we talk about everything. Our relationship isn't what it was before the lie, but it's stronger in some ways, because we've had to work through something difficult together. I've also learned to be more careful about the stories I believe. I've learned to ask questions before accepting accusations. I've learned to recognize the signs of manipulation and isolation. And I've learned that the truth, even when it eventually emerges, can't always undo the damage that a lie has caused. If you're going through something similar, if someone has accused you of something you didn't do, my advice is this: don't try to fight the lie alone. Find people who know you well enough to stand by you despite the accusation. Build your case carefully with evidence and documentation. But most importantly, don't let the lie define you. Your reputation matters, but your integrity matters more. Live in a way that demonstrates who you really are, and eventually, the truth will find its way out. The lie may have changed my life, but it didn't destroy me. And that's the most important thing I've learned.